Music Matters. Mr. Geller.
How's it going?
How you doing, brother? Thank you for doing this, man.
I'm good. I'm glad we can make it work.
Yeah, man. After playing schedule hot potato for a while.
It's been crazy.
It has been a hectic time. It was because we tried to do it and like the fires happened and like a bunch of other things, but I really appreciate you making the time, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. No, I mean, anytime I can ramble for any amount of time, it's always fun.
Yeah, I feel it, bro. I feel it. It's definitely hard, I think, like trying to schedule all these things. It for whatever reason, it just felt like the very beginning of this year, like the first month was just like so much shit happened. I don't know why.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking about this like with a friend. I don't know. It was kind of weird because like it's nice having like the new year. You know, it's like, okay, January 1st, and like using that as like a time to like benchmark and like, I don't know, just like start fresh on things.
Yeah.
And I felt like I started to do that for a couple of days and then the fires happened and it was just like everything. I don't know. And people don't like work in December and like the first part of like January. So
that's like,
it was weird.
That's been such a weird thing for me ever since like I got to a point where like I had to interact with like the traditional side of the music industry. Just how like they just take it upon themselves to like spend an entire month just like doing nothing. And like, I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. Maybe it's more healthy. Like you might even be able to argue that it's more healthy, but like it can be frustrating when you want to do shit and you just keep sending emails and you get like the OOO response where it's like out of office.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. Like, I think, I'm on board for, you know, time for rest and relaxation, but it definitely is like annoying for sure. Like, it's not even just like, dude, the music industry. I think just like, I feel like maybe it's like a post-pandemic thing, but I don't know. I feel like with people working like, you know, remote or like hybrid, whatever, like, I don't know. It just feels like the world kind of like shuts down in December, but maybe those are just the circles that I'm in. So
yeah. You work like a normal 9 to 5, right?
No, I work part-time like for an event company.
Oh,
just,
gotcha.
Like doing creative and brand management for them like during the day. Or I guess the night. It's kind of it's a good setup.
Sporadic.
They let me, you know, work the hours that I need to.
Nice.
But, when I'm not doing, you know, my own artist stuff, or, you know, I do a lot of like scoring and you know, music sync stuff, and
that was so weird for me post-production, like when not post-production, I don't want to say that, post-pandemic, where like everything kind of just went online in like seemingly a matter of like 8 to 9 months, because like where I'm from in the Bay Area, I mean, I don't know, but I feel like San Francisco was a city that was hit like particularly widespread with people going online, just because of like the industry in that city being like 99% made up of tech. So it was just like pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, the city just felt so different because it was like the entire industry had gone into this weird like arbitrary third space where like these dudes are just like living in Oregon, but like they're like working in San Francisco, and like they're just because their office there and they go once a month.
Do you know that Instagram page, Cities by Diana?
No.
Oh, you gotta check that out.
What is it?
It's like this person who, I don't know how they like what their start was on social media, but you've definitely seen it. It's like it's a video of it's like a simulator.
It's
game.
a video game thing, and
they're like, this is the average day in the life of
daily life in a Sacramento transplant. I have seen those. I actually love those videos.
The one for Oakland I saw recently.
I see that one.
And it's it was exactly like what you're describing.
Yeah.
I've never lived in the Bay Area. I mean, I have like good friends who live there, and I don't know. Somehow I just ended up like on a part of the internet that's just like constantly like shitting on like the Bay Area like work culture, I guess. And I don't know, it's funny to hear you say that as like a Bay Area, you know, native.
Yeah, man. Well, I mean, like, that's not even just the internet. That's just like homogenized culture in general, bro. Like, it's like, it's become this like punching bag. Like, and it is heartbreaking in a lot of ways, because like, I love San Francisco more than any city in the world. So I'm from a suburb like 25, 30 minutes east of San Francisco called Concord.
Oh, yeah.
And
like De La Salle.
What?
Yeah, I know.
How do you know about De La Salle?
I went to
because of football.
Then they had a movie about them, right? Yeah, I've seen that. I mean, I'm like a big football fan, specifically like college football.
Yeah.
So recruiting, but
so I grew up 7 minutes from De La Salle. I did not go there.
Okay.
I went to the shitty public school equivalent of that school.
Yeah, I have a friend I think who went there, but weirdly enough, I went to a De La Salle football game. Like
in at De La Salle?
Yeah, it was like in 2015, I think.
Bro, what? That's crazy.
I didn't go up there for the game. Like, I was just in the Bay Area that weekend.
You were in Concord though? That's insane.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we were staying in like Dublin.
Oh, okay, nice.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not super familiar with like the suburbs of the Bay Area, but I mean, I definitely know Concord at least.
This has got to be the first time that De La Salle's ever been brought up on the show.
Oh, they had
That's so crazy.
Had that, the 200 game win streak or something.
Yeah, what's the title called? The title of the movie.
Stands tall.
Is that it? I was gonna say that, but then for whatever reason, my brain flashed that movie about like the basketball players in prison being that. But that's another sports movie.
I've watched so many of those like sports movies that have like, there's like definitely like conservative like undertones or like patriotic,
sure.
like, you know, but they all like blend together. I don't know. I forget the names.
They all like use football as a guise for like picking yourself up by your bootstraps. Like they're like.
I'll be honest, I eat it up, man. Like, one of my favorite shows ever is Friday Night Lights, man.
Oh, dude,
such a good show.
It's goated, bro. Yeah, but it was the Bay Area, like post pandemic and pre-pandemic, felt like two entirely different places. Because it was just like, I don't know, like I felt like, Mario, I don't know if you felt this way, but I really felt like any kind of culture that existed just outside generally in San Francisco just was halved after the pandemic. There's just like literally, even by the eye test, there's less people. And it just feels like, but I guess more specifically musically as well, I think just when something like that happens and there's less like artistic motivation, it's an expensive place to live, it's difficult like that, a lot of things change very fast, and that can be sad. And I guess I understand why, like, I guess conservative media specifically has just jumped on the San Francisco as a fentanyl-ridden shithole, which is just like not really the truth. Like, it has problems, but so does every big city. And you know, San Francisco might have certain problems that are big. You know, it's not a perfect city, but it does suck to kind of watch the way that like the media villainizes San Francisco, and it feels like it comes from the perspective of people who've never even like been there, you know?
I used to want to think that I wanted to live in San Francisco. Like I would go up to the Bay Area a lot, like growing up, and I always really liked it. It isn't, because I definitely was, you know, of the opinion. I mean, you're also saying that it's a different city now than it was, and I the people who I know who live there say the same thing. But I definitely, you know, I'd seen all the sensationalist headlines about, you know, just like how bad the opioids, you know, situation is there, and it is bad.
It is bad for sure.
But it's also really concentrated too.
That's the big thing, man.
Yeah, you know, I was
7 by 7.
I mean, I was there in like I think it was May on like a tour stop. And
where'd you play?
Rickshaw.
I love Rickshaw. Nice.
And I mean, well, where we stayed was like probably right in the middle of, you know, that concentrated area for sure. And
I wonder where you stayed. Do you remember the neighborhood, the Tenderloin?
It was the Tenderloin, but it was like specifically, it was like, I looked up after the fact, it was like one of the worst streets.
Probably like the Market Street, probably Market Street portion of the Tenderloin.
I don't like remember for sure.
That's a tough area.
But I felt bad because my younger brother was with me, and I mean, hopefully my mom never watches or listens to this, but he had the car because he met me up there for the show, and there was like no parking. And if I had known he was going to do this, I wouldn't have gone up to the room. This was after the show, but apparently he ended up like parking his car like 2 miles from the hotel or something, and then he started to walk back. And this was like 2 a.m, and he like called me. He's like, "Yo, somebody's following me," and I was like, "You're walking? Like how far?" And so he ended up Ubering like a mile and a half or whatever. It might not have even been that far, but that was kind of creepy. But then like the next day we had like, you know, a free time and went and checked out some of the other areas. I think like the Mission District is where we that was cool.
Mission's great.
And I was like, okay, this is cool. And kind of what I've heard from friends is that it used to be more widespread, the culture and like the artistic scene and everything there. And I mean, I'm like reading this book about like how avant-garde electronic music really had like a start in America in San Francisco.
I'm not even aware of that. That's interesting.
I wasn't either. It's I think it's called like the history of the Tape Music Center.
I'll have to check it out. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I mean, I don't know. San Francisco is fascinating to me. Just obviously because it's people are saying it's on the comeback, and I don't know who to believe. So
it's hard to tell. I also don't feel fair like making a judgment on if it is or is not coming back, because I'm not there as much as I used to be. I mean, I'm still there pretty often, but I used to be there every single weekend of every single month, and there's the very clear before and after period in my brain, and and there also is like a kind of like even 2021 San Francisco to 2024 San Francisco feels vastly different to me. But how you described it, like concentrated, is quite literally the best way to describe it. It is the most concentrated city in America, and what kills me is that like that's not a part of the conversation when the media wants to villainize it. Like they don't talk about the idea that like San Francisco is 7 miles wide by 7 miles long. It's a very small city, and the districts are like concentrated so heavily into like the poverty-ridden ones and the ones that are just like incredibly affluent. And that's one of the most like hard to grapple with parts of San Francisco for me, I think, is that like you quite literally have like the ultra rich living atop, like literally atop, like the ultra poor.
I mean, that's kind of like what a lot of areas in New York are like too.
Yeah.
I guess I mean, that happens in LA too, but I think just the geographical, landscape of LA, everything's so spread out that I guess you don't see that like stark contrast quite as much, for sure.
It makes me think, I wonder how many San Franciscos could fit in LA. Like,
that's a good question. I've never thought about.
Yeah, like there's like it's so much bigger. It's not like I bet there are cities in LA that are bigger than San Francisco for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean when I was there in May, I kind of had this. I hadn't been back in a minute, and I kind of forgot how small like the actual like city limits are.
Yeah,
I thought it was a lot bigger just from like my memory, but yeah.
Do you feel like people's perceptions of LA are accurate, or like do you ever feel like people maybe not vindicate but like say things about LA that aren't true? Because I mean, you're from here, so I'm sure your perception of it is vastly different from like mine or anybody else that moves here. But do you feel like people paint it to be what it is, or they paint it in like more of an inaccurate light?
I guess it just depends who you're like referring to, because it's painted so many different ways.
Yeah.
I mean, but that's the thing about LA is it's just like, because of how widespread it is, and how many different lives you can have here. I think like you can paint it in a bunch of different ways, and all of those ways could be accurate. I don't know. I definitely do think that there's, every time I'm on like Instagram and I, in some like comment section, and everyone's talking about how LA is just like influencers and Erewhon and just like the classic
it's all cloud driven, like,
yeah. I mean, that's personally not my LA, but I'm sure there's a lot of truth to it. I mean, yeah, I don't know how people really portray LA, but I definitely have like there's things about LA that I love and things that I really don't like. Yeah. Having lived here my whole life. But I don't know. The one thing for certain is there's like this, I don't know. I guess this is something more relevant for me personally, is because I have a lot of friends who have done the LA to New York move.
I feel like I've seen that so much recently.
I don't even know if it's a recent thing. I feel like that's just, people move between LA and New York, especially in, creative fields or whatever, all the time. But yeah, it's just like they move there, and all of a sudden it's like a comparison. You really can't compare at all. They're completely different cities. So
it'd almost be easier to compare San Francisco and New York.
It would be, but I don't even know. Like, I mean, it would, yeah, but I don't know that you could even compare them. I mean, but I haven't spent enough time in San Francisco to say that, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't been to, like, I guess, like, I'm trying to think of the major cities I've really been to. Like, I've been to SF, LA, New York, Chicago, and, like, that, like, may be it, to be honest. Detroit. That, like, might be it, to be honest.
I've never been to Detroit.
Yeah, it's cool. My girlfriend used to work out there. She worked out there for a summer. Okay. But, yeah, dude, like, I don't know. Like, I feel like that rhetoric specifically, the whole, like kind of like that. What was the name of that person you were talking about on Instagram?
Cities by Diana.
Yeah, like I feel like
my favorite account on Instagram.
Yeah, no, that shit's so, bro. The Sacramento one was so funny, but I feel like the Sacramento one killed me, bro. Like
that was like 2 days ago.
Yeah,
that was like the most recent one.
The Santa Cruz one,
the Eugene one, I think. Was. Yeah, my brher just moved there, so I sent it to him. But.
The names are so funny that she comes up with.
Sock.
Yeah, you go to your plug in Santa Cruz, Gooch.
From your polycule that relocated from Seattle.
That shit is so funny.
It's crazy how I mean a lot of it is accurate.
Yeah, no, but like I feel like the perception that somebody like that may paint of LA, like I feel like I never come face to face with that stereotype until the fires, and that rhetoric like really bothered me. Like people saying things like, oh, like why are we all upset about the people in the Palisades losing their homes? They're multi-millionaires, and as if that like dehumanizes people to the level of like you know, like losing their homes. And it bothered me even more when that narrative spread to the Eaton thing, because that's just like blatantly not true. Like Altadena is not an affluent area at all.
Couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, you know, a lot of the people living there, you know, those are like historical
generational families.
Like, and probably not insured, you know. It's so and that's not to diminish the you know impact of the Palisades fire,
of course,
but I mean, you know, again, that kind of just goes back to how, you know, LA is so spread out. There's so many different worlds in LA. But I don't know, I haven't really seen like one definitive painting of LA, I guess, to like comment on.
I feel like it is so varied, and I think it's because the city's so varied. I don't know of any other city in America that like is anything like LA, because it's just, I don't know if other cities are this spread out. It's just so different, man. And the way the media paints just any city in general, be it Chicago. Like I remember Chicago was the huge punching bag prior to San Francisco, and then it was like Detroit, and then, but it's always just like they just pick a new punching bag, and it's just like pundits speaking on places they don't have experience in, or like speaking about them through the guise of like, you know, a media statement, and not like the day-to-day life of the Americans living there. And it's just so removed, and it bothers me, bro. The talking a bit more about like you living in LA, but also just like how I can wear your stuff, was you played the basketball tournament, and you're a hooper, bro. You can hoop.
I did grow up playing basketball. For sure.
You're a hooper.
Our team was not well constructed. I love those guys.
Who'd you
we
end
didn't
up
have
with?
height. My friend, who's on my team?
Did Zay sub on your team, right? You were on that team? No, you weren't.
No, my friends Keith and Cairo. And we had Max. Make it back, Max. He was gonna be on our team.
Oh, bro, Max talks so much shit about basketball.
Well, we needed him for his height.
But, he is tall, man.
But he wasn't able to, so we went small ball. And
can Max like actually hoop?
I've never seen him play, so I don't know.
He talks like he can hoop.
If you're that tall and you can't play, then give me some of those height inches, please.
I could see it going either way with Max.
I mean, he seems like he's good at basketball.
The idea of Max like yamming though is so funny to me. But so you played that, and then I became aware of your stuff and became a fan pretty quickly. And then
thank you.
Yeah, of course, bro. And then a bunch of my friends and Mario and I think like a bunch of my friends went to your public sound show, the one that you did on the LA River. And that concept just fascinated me, and I wish I was there. I was in the Bay Area at the time, but just seeing the videos and stuff, it made it so clear to me just like how fleshed out and how live a lot of the stuff you're doing is. And it was cool because like previously I had not really perceived it that way. A lot of the times I look at electronic music and I perceive a lot of it to be so in the box that like and I say in the box in terms of like digital stuff, not in terms of like creativity, but I perceive so much of it to be so in the box that I would think that translating it to a live setting like that would be difficult. But the way that you did it was so seamless and cool. And then I found out, just kind of wrapping into the LA thing, I found out that you were from LA, and I figured how cool that must have been to play in the city that you're from at this LA River spot, but kind of like growing out the live side of what you're doing. And also, I guess from this, like a two-parter, I guess, like one, how did you kind of begin to grow out what you wanted your live sound to be? And then two, was any of that public sound stuff, was any of the inspiration for that just from the idea? Because this is what I got from it. Maybe I'm projecting, but I get really sick of this, watching the same 9 artists and the same 9 bills every single weekend and nobody like implementing levels of creativity into their events. And it's something that like I try to do really, really, like I pay a lot of attention to it in the events that we throw.
Yeah.
It's very like near and dear to my heart. But I was curious if any of the inspiration from it came from like you like consciously trying to stray from the typical LA type concert.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to answer that first, no, I wouldn't necessarily say that. I mean, because actually kind of what it, you know, stemmed from was, you know, a lot of the, I'll use the word content that that I share on, you know, Reels and TikTok is, you know, I try to like set it up to be in a way that's, you know, I'm bringing the viewer, you know, kind of inside of my creative space, because I don't know, it just kind of speaks to me. And I don't know, I'd gotten back from tour in May, which was, you know, like I really only played my first like true show in January.
Gotcha.
Of 2024, and then you know, a lot of stuff just kind of started happening really fast, and my second show was the first show of tour, which was a short run. So, yeah, I mean, you know, I'm still kind of learning that for sure, you know, about like what my live show is and live sound. But I kind of like this idea of when I got back from tour, you know, I've been working on a new EP since, you know, June-ish. And, I don't know. I was trying to think of something that was kind of like a cool, you know, a lot of my favorite artists and people that I admire have a variety of different live or shows that they'll do. You know, I think the biggest name right now in electronic music that people think of is like Fred again. I mean, or like Fortet. You know, Floating Points is somebody who's also a big inspiration to me.
That makes sense.
You know, it's like they might have a live show where they're doing, you know, their discography, and it's, you know, they've got synths and everything, and then they've got a DJ set show, and then they've got something where they're doing it with like an orchestra. Yeah. So I was kind of thinking how I could do something, I don't know, in the meantime while I was finishing the new music, that was kind of like a cool, you know, community type of event that, you know, I wasn't going to charge for or anything. Yeah. So I was thinking, okay, maybe like doing this thing called Public Sounds, which isn't like a quote unquote traditional Geller live show, where maybe I'm doing kind of these synth experiments, you know, and improv stuff on the fly, where it's non-recorded music. And I don't know. You know, and it's kind of not necessarily a sound bath, but like in that kind of vein. So we did one actually before the LA River one in July at Elysian Park. And that was really fun, although it was disgustingly hot that day. And I learned a lot about this event. At the time, I wasn't sure that I wanted it to be a recurring thing, but it was such a good turnout. It was really fun that I was like, okay, this is like a cool kind of, you know, alternative show for me to do, especially great for like, you know, bridge periods while I'm finishing, you know, a new project and getting a new live show ready. But yeah, and that one did really well. So then I was thinking, okay, let's do another one when it cools off a little bit. And I don't know. It's funny because that LA River location was not my first choice.
What was?
What was my first choice? It was I think it was there was this park. I'm forgetting the name of it, but then I went and checked it out, and I was like, oh, this is. I mean, it's not ideal, having people sit on concrete for sure,
but it's cool.
But yeah. I mean, it was so cool, and it was just perfect weather that day too. So it worked out how it needed to work out. But yeah,
as somebody who's like so obsessed, like my love of music largely stems from the live side of things, and I really grew up.
Same.
Yeah, and I really grew up like obsessed with shows, and it's like really core to my identity as a music fan, and. It's been interesting as I've gotten older, finding myself for the first time getting a little bored of some of the traditional style events that I grew up going to. And I grew up on a lot of like definitely listening to a lot of like harder kinds of music and like punk music and a lot of stuff, and then like found my way into a bunch of other things. But that was a lot of the live stuff I was watching for the first like, I don't know, 3-4 years of me being obsessed with music. And it was interesting because with that genre of music, sometimes the energy is built in. Where it's like it becomes a little easier to like control the room, because a lot of times those fan bases are like just ready to participate in that manner. But I've really found like such a love for artists like you who like find this way to experiment with other genres in the live sense in a really cool way. Like my brain, when we were talking about this, like it goes to like two different things. Like one, like when I first heard of you doing that, I thought it was so cool for a lot of reasons, but like one of them being that like the ethos of it is kind of like it feels like a punk rock thing in a cool way.
Well, like, I mean, especially the LA River thing. Yeah. I mean, that was probably where because you hear stories about, LA like 10 years ago. There was, and I'm not in this scene, so maybe it's, maybe I'm completely off on this, and it might still be very vibrant, but like the punk rock shows in the LA River, like I used to always hear about those when I was too young to attend.
Me too.
So I was like, oh, how cool would it be if I did like a synth thing in the river. So yeah,
and it's cool because like that culture, like that DIYism of like just pulling up somewhere, figuring it the fuck out, and just doing it. It's so cool when it's translated to other genres, and I think it becomes so it's such a different energy because like the let's play a punk show at a public place thing has been long established, but let's bring a bunch of synths and analog equipment and do like an electronic style event at like a public place is super cool. And my brain ran here too when you were talking about it, but also when I first heard of it. Are you familiar with the Brownies and Lemonade guys?
Yeah. Very. I in high school I used to go to a lot of their parties, and they actually were like the promoters for the tour that I was on in May. Yeah,
I didn't even know that. That's really cool.
Yeah. No, I mean, in high school I used to go to, like when they were first starting, I was refreshing my Twitter feed like every Thursday for them to drop a new lineup. Yeah. Because and I was just like praying that it was going to be an all ages show. Yeah. Because I didn't have a fake ID. But I'm very familiar with them.
The shit that they do is really cool, and I really like that they have this like really specific mission. It seems like I mean, I guess I've never talked to them, I wouldn't know, but it's always seemed like they have a very, very specific mission of like really like pushing the bounds of what a live event can be every single time. It never feels like it's the same thing. Like they're always in like random crazy locations with like these strange lineups, and they do like surprise draw, like all these like all the theatrics of it. I think is what makes it like so interesting, man. And it feels like, I don't know, it feels like something that I you would think you'd get more of in the social media age, but it almost feels like some of that's dwindled because like, I don't know, I just think there is a very, like, the industry has a very clear-cut idea of what a live run should be and what it should feel like. And like, when you're at this level, you're opening for these types of artists, and when you get to their level, then maybe you can do a small headlining tour. It feels very streamlined, and I think it's cool to like cut through that kind of like, I guess, oversaturated kind of like trajectory.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of thinking. I mean, I agree with all that. I can't say that I was even really thinking about any of that when I was planning it. I was just like, oh, you know what, this would be fun, and at the end of the day, like that was kind of the you know, the main inspiration behind it, I guess.
Can I ask, did you guys do it legally, or did you have to just kind of pull up?
We
don't criminalize yourself.
I mean, no, we didn't do anything illegal. I definitely was inquiring about.
It's hard, bro.
Well, yeah, with the first one at Elysian Park. Well, there's a lot. You know, you go to Elysian Park on any weekend, and you know, there's a lot of people there having you know, gatherings. Mm-hmm. And I went and drove around, and I found this one part of it that was like really close to the reservoir. It was really tucked away, and I was like, oh, this is perfect. So I went to the office there, and I was like, hey, can we do this? And like, is there a way we can like reserve the spot here? And they were like, they don't reserve. There's only one part that they reserve, and there's actually another LA-based record label that does like shows there, and I wasn't trying to like step on any toes, and you know, I wanted this to be a different thing. And also that part of the park was like $2,000, I think, $3,000 to like rent out.
Things like that they charge absorbent.
It's crazy prices. Yeah. So what they said was, we're not gonna, you know, as long as it's not, you know, like a crazy crowd, and you know, the park ranger isn't called, you're probably fine. But we can't.
That's cool. They told you that.
Yeah, they said, you know, but it's first come first serve. So we started the event at I think like 2 or 3 that day. I got to the park I think at 6 a.m.
Jesus, dude.
And that was crazy because...
Was it dark out?
I mean, the sun was out for sure. I was by myself too, and like I was on like 4 hours of sleep. And I had to go to the bathroom really bad once I like loaded everything out.
But you want to leave your shit?
I mean, when nature calls, man, like, you know, and it wasn't number one. So I was like, okay, I got to find a bathroom, but there wasn't like an open one.
Yeah, and all your stuff was there.
Well, you know, when you get in that situation, man, you stop thinking. So, so I left everything and I drove down the hill to like Chinatown, because it was like 6:30 in the morning. So I was like, okay, realistically, will anybody be around here? And I guess this was stupid. I shouldn't have done this. And I found a bathroom, came back, and everything was gone, including a subwoofer that I rented from Guitar Center and didn't get the insurance policy on. And like, I didn't even freak out. I just, like, for a second I was just like, there's no way. Like, what?
How long were you gone for?
Like 15 minutes max.
Oh my God.
Fortunately though, there was a guy who I did see kind of coming into the little like area as I was driving out with his dog, and he saw me freaking out. He's like, hey, sorry, was that stuff yours? And I was like, yeah. And he said, oh, I thought somebody left it here from last night. He just moved it over to the side, like behind a tree, to like hide it. So it was all there.
What a good ass guy.
No, and then honestly, it turned out that he's like a director, and we ended up actually working together on a.
L.A. man.
No, he was really chill. Like honestly, like he came back later and he brought me like a picnic blanket to sit on, and
my God.
And then we ended up just kind of becoming like, you know, buddies after that. And we worked on a project together.
That's great.
It all worked out, but that was a really dumb decision that I shouldn't have made.
That's like the best possible outcome though.
Yeah, for sure.
Was he just he was just up early morning walking his dog?
He lived like up the street.
Damn,
he was just walking his dog. Yeah.
That's so crazy, man. Yeah, I thought you were gonna be like, I thought you were gonna be like, I lost my all my stuff.
That would have sucked for sure. But no. So I guess to answer your question, we didn't really do it legally, but we didn't run into any problems because we weren't creating problems.
Yeah.
The people who came by who didn't know about it, they stayed. Mm-hmm. They had a good time. So I think that actually worked out. If this was a punk show, you know, that could probably rub some people the wrong way.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. So you know, I think it worked out.
But even that kind of stuff, I do feel like, I mean, I've noticed this for sure. I think like there is a lot more leeway that's given in LA. You know, I don't know why. Maybe it's lack of resources. Yeah. Maybe it's like just like they have bigger problems, bigger fish to fry.
Exactly. That was kind of what I was thinking was, you know, there's so many other things that they have to worry about than, you know. So I guess we kind of took a risk and, you know, fortunately we didn't have to pack up.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I think what's so cool about you doing it in your genre too is like your music is so environmental. Like I think one of my favorite aspects of it, I think the live version, the EP that you did is just to give you your flowers on it. It's like one of my favorite things on YouTube. It's incredible.
Thank you.
Man.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I love it so much. Also crazy that Tom Bowles shot it. That guy is just an absolute goat.
Yeah, he's a good friend. I met him through another director. I mean, yeah, I have it's definitely nice to be friends with really talented people for sure.
That guy's LUTs are like some of my favorite.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I know him and I still use his LUT packs. Like, I'm like, yo, like, this is just so crazy, like, you know. But
he's goated, man.
Yeah, no, I mean, the whole crew for that was really good. When we had such a small crew, like everybody was doing like, I mean, you know, it's all indie, low budget stuff.
Yeah.
Honestly, like, shout out to everybody who was involved in that because like with the budget we had for that, I mean, it was so much less than it really should have been.
Yeah.
You know, and everyone was just doing like, you know, I'm not trying to get any like OSHA violations or anything here. I mean, you know, but you know how it is on the indie level for sure.
Yeah.
So everybody kind of had to wear like 3 or 4 hats that day. And, that was maybe the most stressed out I've ever been in my life.
Worth it though.
But yeah, I mean, you know, you perform under stress and it turned out really good. So yeah.
But like I think that is a good example of like how environmental based some of your music can be. Like building out the environment for that is something that was so cool to me. And I think that is maybe why the public sounds thing to me is such a really cool and like engaging idea. It's because so much of your music is obviously based in the electronic side of stuff, but even more niche down, a lot of it's in like the environmental like ambience kind of like pocket largely. So I do feel like, and I was interested to ask about this, I would imagine your music specifically, and I think this goes for most musicians, but I would bet it plays a bigger role for you. I was curious like how much the environment that you're creating in like affects the sound of your music, because it is something that is so environmental, and a lot of, even like, you know, obviously this is true for the scoring, but a lot of the times you're making something to another piece of media, be that the environment, be that a feeling, be that a movie. But like how much does the environment at which you're creating in kind of like affect your process, being that your music is so environmental based and so like it almost feels like you're soundtracking different places even outside of the scoring sometimes?
It's very environmental based. I mean, down to even like the weather on the day, you know. Just a couple days ago, I mean, I was supposed to be working on something else, and it was a gloomy day, and I was thinking, no, I'm feeling, you know, really inspired to just, you know, start something that's a bit more gloomy, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I'm like a huge believer that, you know, your environment and your workspace are like, probably, in my opinion, for me, it's like the most important thing.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Sure. Yeah, it's definitely a huge influence, and that's kind of why that is also part of the reason I was thinking like, okay, like having the public sounds thing, you know, change locations every time. Yeah, was something that, you know, I could have just done it at that first park spot again because it was really good, but I kind of like the location changing every time, and also kind of the vibe of the music changing a little bit every time, because like I said, a lot of it is, I would say like 90 to 95% of it is like not previously recorded music that I'm doing there. Or it's like taking elements of
interesting
stuff I'm working on and, you know, kind of recontextualizing it, but like in terms of the actual like writing and, you know, arranging process and I guess actual songs, 100%. Yeah, my environment.
When you say like you're taking things that previously existed, what are those things? Like a loop or like a certain like riff or something? And are you kind of just like starting with that as kind of like the blank canvas, and then you're painting all over it based on however you're feeling in the moment?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much exactly that. I mean, for example, like there's a song, like the first song on the upcoming EP, there was like a synth loop that I made that was kind of like the basis of that song. And I don't know, I was just kind of like resampling a lot of that stuff. Yeah, I mean, you kind of hit it on the head there. That's exactly what I was doing.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's very, like, I don't know, like, maybe I'm just not privy to it because maybe I don't know, like, the mass amount of electronic music as much as I do other genres, but is that, like, a common thing in the live setting for a lot of electronic artists, like, that level of improv and is, like, improv? Because, like, my brain, when I think of, like, that amount of improv just goes to, like, live jazz music a lot of the time.
Well, I'm not going to put myself on the same level as, I mean, I have so much respect for live jazz and just jazz musicians in general. That's like a different level
for sure
of musicianship. But I guess to an extent, yeah. I mean, it really just depends, honestly, because, there are so many different, I guess, types of electronic live shows.
Yeah.
There are some where they claim that it's live and it's not. Not that there's anybody specific. It's just I know that's a thing.
Yeah.
And then there are some where it's like, okay, like this is crazy. I mean, Floating Points is an example of somebody who like he'll post like a video on Instagram of this like rig of modular synths that he has set up for like 2 dates. He in like London or something.
Yeah.
And it just like breaks my brain.
Where's Floating Points based out of?
London, I think. Yeah.
Stuff, dude. That album he did with Pharoah Sanders is some of the craziest shit I've ever heard.
Yeah, like that. That's probably one of my favorite albums ever. And they did that show at the Hollywood Bowl.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Dude, that was maybe second, and actually it might even be better than. I saw Frank Ocean at FYF in 2016 or 17, whenever it was.
That's crazy.
When he had like Brad Pitt there.
God, I would do anything to go to an FYF. That
was
sucks,
the best
man.
festival.
Yeah.
The best festival, and I'm so sad it's gone. But no, I think the Floating Points show was probably the best show I've ever seen, including the Frank Ocean FYF show, because like it was just so crazy. Like they had the full orchestra there, or it was just strings.
Wow.
But and then they had like a quintet of. It was so interesting. Like they had it was an electronic quintet basically, where they had Caribou playing. I'm forgetting what he was playing. I think he was on a couple of synths. They had this really, really talented ambient composer, Carolus Coverdale, playing the clavichord, I think. Fortet was playing like tape echo.
Whoa. And
like another synth. And then obviously Floating Points. But like, yeah, I mean, no, I like cried at that show. And that was honestly so inspiring to me. That I would say that show definitely had a big influence on like my thought process and creating various live shows. 100%.
That makes a lot of sense. It's really cool, I think, to see. And again, maybe like I think a lot of the people I'm citing in this genre, I'm definitely not as versed in as a lot of other genres. But
I mean, you knew that album, so
yeah,
I mean, that's like one of the only ones you need to know.
But that one was like super critically acclaimed and stuff.
True.
But it is really cool to see like some people kind of like the I think another cool example of this is the project that Fred again did with Brian Eno. Like that's another album that I think is just so. Like it has the classic like Brian Eno isms in it, but it's in a very updated way. which is something
sure.
that I find so interesting. It's like this connection point in electronic music right now between like kind of the new and the old. Dude, there's this artist. You would love her. Are you familiar with Oxist? You know who that is?
Yeah.
Yeah,
She's a
her
good friend.
Yeah, she played this last show that we threw, but she's incredible. I love what she's doing right now. She's another cool example of that.
Yeah. No, I love everything she's doing. Yeah.
How do you feel right now about the just kind of current state of electronic music, and like what do you think are the most exciting touch points that are coming out in the genre right now, and like how do you see these things progressing the next couple of years?
Yeah, I don't know about the last part because I really don't know.
Yeah.
But I think it's when I started making really shitty beats when I was like a freshman in high school.
How old are you now?
I'm 24, about to be 25 in a couple weeks.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Yeah, but like I remember that something that I kind of hated when I was starting out was that there was either I wasn't looking in the right places, or I felt like there was this kind of really high barrier of entry for like learning. You had to have all these and I mean, and this is like 2014, 2015, which is like imagine 2004 or 1994. Like, it was definitely way worse back then. But even in 10 years, I feel like there's been a huge improvement in like just people being more like forthcoming with information and like basically, long story short, I think it's exciting that there's a lower barrier for entry, which can be good or bad, but sometimes I think the bad comes from like an irreverence for things. Sure. But no, I think like it's I think it's more good than bad, obviously, that there's just like some of the most incredible electronic music, or just music in general, but I guess more specifically electronic, that I've found is like from somebody who's just it's just like their laptop and they don't even have like any of the like modular or analog or whatever, like and I don't know, it's in the era of social media, which can be kind of a bit of a like stress point for sure, and like constantly feeling like you have to be online and marketing yourself. I think it's also like a really valuable tool. That's what I try to view it as. I mean, pretty much almost everything that's happened for me in my career has been 100% or close to, because of like social media as like a tool. So I think just like in this era, there's just, I don't know, there's so much more in anybody's repertoire to create, and I think that bodes well for just like the future of not just this genre, but every. And
I think that's a really great way to look at it. Like I always find that people who kind of have this I guess like how would you phrase it, this like hesitancy, I think sometimes to like embrace the tool that is social media, sometimes they do tend to get left behind a little bit, and I don't want to say they're making like excuses, but a lot of the time it does feel like people just kind of sit in this pocket where they're like, I don't do the social media thing, I don't want to do it, and that's cool, I understand why. Like I think most people who like, I don't think art and social media were ever really meant to be tied at the hip in the way that they are.
No,
but I
probably
think
not.
But I think like when I think the way that you're thinking about it is really correct, because I feel like you need to embrace it as a tool rather than like a hindrance, because I don't know, the example I always think about is people like really, really having this disdain for TikTok and the way that it's changed the music industry, and I understand those points entirely, but those same people don't seem to have any problem with things like YouTube, and in reality all that TikTok is right now, it's
condensed YouTube.
It's just vertical YouTube. It's like you can still make the incredible artistic things you want to create, you're just putting them on like app that's called something different. And I
Yeah.
understand like the value of physical media, and I understand the value of live, obviously. But I feel like people sometimes just look at it as a hindrance rather than embracing it as a tool, and very often I feel like that gets people left behind sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, and I've even had periods where I view it as a hindrance for sure. And I think it's all about like finding a balance, which again is something I am still working on. I probably always will be.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you can upload a video, you just recorded in 10 seconds and your life could change tomorrow. And I think like that kind of keeps me from ever feeling too like down about anything, because it's just like, well, you never know what could happen in a week or in an hour, so that's exciting to me. Yeah.
I also think it's very much a case of like, I don't know, like I think it could be easy, and I do this a lot. I think it could become very easy to like really, really take social media as something that's like one, daunting, but also like there's a lot of truth to the statement that comparison is the thief of joy. And I think like social media is the easiest place ever to compare yourself to other people. But on the flip side, if you can find a way to like harness that same energy in a way that's positive, it shows you that it's possible. Like we've all seen it. Like people go from just having no success or no traction to the next day they've found a successful career. It can literally change that quick. And I think there's a lot of hope in that for a lot of people. And I think that's probably a good thing entirely.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, it's also interesting because, even talking to friends of mine who are at a much further point in their career and, much more established following, and even hearing them talk about the like, oh, engagement, like, or the comparison stuff, like I guess knowing that like never goes away,
yeah.
As much as it kind of sucks, it's also kind of like, okay, then maybe I'm not doing something too wrong. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it does provide, overall hope, I would say. Yeah.
I think those stories give me a lot of hope. I think that was like growing up, that was something, because I mean, I've been doing this for 7 years now, like almost 7 years in June. So like 6.5, I guess. But whenever I found myself kind of like in a place or a state of frustration, all the people I look to, they'd all been doing it for like 8 to 9 to 10 plus years before they just had one thing go incredibly right. And that one thing a lot of the times was just like a catalyst for everything else to go correct. I mean, think about like, even like I always make fun of the Grammy category, Best New Artist, because like all those artists have been doing it for like 10 years. Chappell Rowan's like been doing this for 10 years
forever,
and she won like Best New Artist yesterday, but like in her mind and in reality, she's not a new artist by any stretch of the imagination. She's actually an incredibly like established artist at this point. He's been doing it for a very, very long time, but it's just like she hit the perfect storm. And also in like a way that was so interesting, it was like her song went crazy, and then there was the Coachella thing. It was just like everything happened all at once. I would imagine too just how stressful that can be. But I think somebody who, like her, has been doing this for so long, is probably prepared for that level of success to come. But those stories give me a lot of hope. Yeah,
no, definitely. I completely agree.
I bet like the impact that technology and social media had on like music was probably even exacerbated in electronic music specifically like technology, because I'd be curious to know more about like the history of like, because obviously like in electronic music, especially in the kind of electronic music that I think you make, there's a really, really difficult like barrier to entry with things like price, because a lot of the times like buying an OP1 or like spending all this money on like all this analog equipment, all these synths, it's the price point's high, like it's difficult. But I do think what you said about like some of the greatest electronic artists just being like people with their laptops in their rooms, I think it's really cool that like kind of like digital imitation software and like these different plugins and stuff have gotten as close to a lot of analog gear as like anything ever has.
I mean, to your point about the price being a barrier of entry. I mean, that's
Yeah.
why I don't have like a savings account, because that shit is so expensive. I've definitely like cooled down on it for sure, and I'm glad that I, it was something that I, that gear is an investment, or at least I can tell myself that. But no, I mean, like, dude, I even recently, and I have like, modular racks and other analog synths, and sometimes I find that I end up using like digital emulations, not just in concert with the analog stuff, but like sometimes instead of it, because
Interesting.
I mean, it's getting so good, and I'm not anti-plugin at all. I'm actually very pro plugin.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, no, I mean, it is pretty insane. I mean, just even like a couple of years ago, a lot of like those emulations were not so good, and like now, I mean, you can't really
Tell
the difference. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah.
Was that daunting for you when you realized, like, because I would imagine, like, one, as having an artist project that's primarily based in a lot of these like cool electronic ambient type sounds, and that's one aspect of it, and then there's also like even the other thing that you do, like scoring films, is another like incredibly technologically, I guess, intensive type of music where like there's a pretty heavy barrier to entry in terms of price.
That's way higher barrier to entry. Well, if you're talking about working with like live session musicians.
Oh, I just meant like in price.
Oh, well, that is like so expensive. That's what I mean. Like,
yeah.
And I think I don't know if he was the first one who really did it, but like Hans Zimmer, with his libraries that he put together a long time ago, and like now that's become like a really big thing where all these different companies will record a full orchestra at a very specific studio.
Interesting.
And then they record every instrument, playing every note, every different like articulation at various expression points. So you basically can get the BBC orchestra on your computer for like $400, which is that's $400, but it's also like I don't even know how much it would cost to record. I
don't want to know.
It's insane. So I mean, I would say that like the barrier of entry and in that space too has also like been it gets a little bit lower, which is good for sure. I mean, I would definitely say that is a space where I think the barrier is more just a lot of like gatekeepers of like knowledge, and like
I hate that shit.
I don't know. I mean, because I went to like music school, and I didn't have like.
Where'd you go to school?
I went to Berkeley.
Damn nice.
Yeah, but like I didn't really have like a huge, like I did play clarinet and guitar and a very small amount of piano, a lot of Guitar Hero, if that counts.
I majored in Guitar Hero.
Yeah, when I was growing up, but like I didn't have like an extensive, I wasn't in like youth orchestra or anything. I wish I was, but I didn't do any of that. So when I was at Berkeley, it was interesting because I was kind of trying to learn more of like the theory side of things that I didn't have like a foundation in, and a lot of the people my peers they had the theory foundation, and they were there to learn more of like the technical and implementation side of things, which is kind of where I started. So it was interesting in that regard, but there's definitely like a culture of gatekeeping in the more like
in composition.
And I'm hardly even. I mean, it's in everything, but like and I'm hardly even in. When I'm composing, I'm not in the same. I'm not like doing a Newman family kind of like traditional score, so it's kind of hard for me to even speak on this. But just from people that I know too, who are in that the classical, neoclassical extended space, like it's pretty ruthless. But it's just people that have a lot of, I guess, reverence for their for the history of, you know, what they're working on, and I respect that to an extent.
Yeah, it's interesting though, because I always and not to compare my knowledge in any genre of music to that level at all, but I think the more that I learn about anything musical, whether it be history, whether it be my playing, whether it be like just literally anything in the whole musical compass, like the more that I learn, I often feel like the more open and accepting and understanding I get. So it's like I always have scratched my head. And,
Should be that way.
Yeah.
I mean,
So I've always scratched my head a little bit how somebody can be, on one hand, so musically educated and then simultaneously so musically elitist. It almost feels like there's a fear that I don't want to say like a fear they're going to be replaced, but it's like a fear that there's like a finite amount of people that can do this, which I don't really think is true.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I go back and forth on that because I used to be very vocal that I was like pro gatekeeping, and on certain things I definitely still am. But like
what?
Oh, I don't know. Like food places. And, sometimes if I find like a really good like library of like sounds or something, I'm like, let me at least gatekeep this until I've like gotten a good use out of this, and then you guys can have it, you know. But no, I mean, I don't know. I think like I kind of lost my train of thought, but I would say like it's I'm more anti-gatekeep than I am pro gatekeep.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I mean, even in terms of like what you were saying about like access to information and stuff, and like the impact that's had on electronic music too. Like, I would also I would bet that like a lot of that information being so public now, and like there being Reddit forums about like just pages and pages and pages of information, and like where you can find different plugins, how you can crack these plugins, like everything, like all that, just access to information. Yeah. Sometimes like I would imagine maybe there's a bit of, maybe the right word's anger, from people who like only got that education in like a very traditional setting where they had to go to like, you know, they had to like pay for it and do all these things, and then all of a sudden it's all available on the internet for free. Yeah,
I mean, definitely. I try to like, I had a professor in college who was like that, and I remember him putting me on blast like a couple of times in front of the class, and
for what? Like,
I don't even remember. It was some bullshit, honestly. Like I did something right, but I didn't get there in the way that he wanted it to be done, which I understand. It's like music, also, it's not math. No, but that was the thing. Like, I just felt like that was kind of my frustration with some of those. I wouldn't say it was an institutional thing. I would say it's just like it varied from professor to professor, but I don't know. It didn't really feel like they wanted you to be them. And I think a lot of that maybe like stemmed from frustration. I don't know.
Or like a perception of like a newer generation having it easier.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I definitely try to put myself in like, what would I be thinking if I were, 60? I don't know. I'm not saying any names, but I was that age, and I really didn't know anything about the guy, honestly. But I don't know. It change is a scary thing for sure, and I'm sure in 10 or 20 years, like I'll probably be in those shoes. I can only hope, and I'm sure I may feel some of those feelings too. But I also think, then you look at some of the people who are, getting up to that age and still successful, and it's because they were willing to adapt to like the way that things are trending. So, it's cavalier and it's short, but I always think of the phrase adapt or die. No, I mean, it's true. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Was your experience in music school and going to Berkeley, was that something that you look back on, like, one, I guess fondly, but two, like, do you think it contributed a lot to like how you think musically and what you want to do? Like, do you look back on it as something that you think helped you in more ways than it was just expensive and I'm sure a lot of work? Yeah, obviously it helped me for sure. I mean, my experience was kind of weird only because I went to junior college for a year. I didn't think I wanted to, go to music school at all. I had gotten into colleges out of high school to do like political science or, stuff that at that point I wasn't actually interested in anymore.
Yeah.
At least pursuing a career in. So I kind of went to junior college for a year to feel things out, and then like a family friend had told me that Berkeley has like an online school, which I applied and got into, and I was doing it as like a feeler to see if I wanted to go to Boston in person, and I liked it and I was going to, and I was getting ready to transfer to Boston, and then the pandemic happened, and everybody who was in Boston went online, and they were paying like $50,000 more than I was. And by the time everything resumed full in-person classes, I think I had like a semester or something left like that. So I never got like an in-person experience. So it's hard for me to like really have an opinion on that, because I'm sure it would have been different if I was in person and I was in, seminars and, whatever, just around people. But it still was, a formational experience for me, I would say, even in doing it online, just because it was a lot of stuff that I feel like it probably helped me in ways that I maybe couldn't even put my finger on. But I wouldn't say that like when I'm working on music, I'm like, oh, you know what? I should have had an augmented fourth right here or something.
Yeah.
Like I've never, thought that way. But
it makes me question, like, does anybody past Jacob Collier think about music like that? Like,
I'm sure, yeah.
Like in the pop space or in like any kind of pop leaning space.
I mean, that's why I have a lot of respect for Charlie Puth, because
that's true.
For as much as people like kind of shit on him, like for like, oh, well, he's so smart, why does he make music like that? I think that's incredibly impressive.
I think it's a testament to his intelligence.
Yeah, because he knows what works, and it's like that's such a flex that like, yeah, he could make extremely technical, just like music school porn sounding music, basically. But he's like a Grammy winning, I think. Like he's one of the most famous artists in the world and writers. So that's really impressive to me.
It's like he could go to the augmented fourth here, but he also could just go to the root, and it might sound better.
Yeah. So I mean, big ups to Charlie Puth. Yeah.
My favorite example of that is John Mayer. Have you?
Yeah, I'm not super familiar with his his discography, but I mean, I know he's like incredibly talented, though.
He's like a shredder, man. Like the shit that he plays a lot of like jazz type guitar when he plays with like Dead and Company, and like even there's videos of him doing it and stuff, and he obviously knows like an insane amount of music theory. But so many of his songs are just like basic 4-chord open chord progressions, or like they're just really well written songs a lot of the time. And I think it's actually like, I don't know, I actually feel like, and it's become like a meme, but I fucking hate Jacob Collier. Like that guy annoys the shit out of me, to be honest with you. And I do feel like, and this might be a little bit of a silly take, but I do feel like what he's contributed to music is more of a negative thing than a positive thing. Maybe I just dislike his songwriting, and for that I have this weird vitriolic energy towards him. But he that whole culture kills me sometimes.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say anything bad about him. I think he's really talented, and
I got beef with him.
Yeah, it's on site.
It's on site with Jacob Collier, bro.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I mean, like, I'm not particularly a fan of his music. Yeah, I mean, like, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. In terms of like, I don't know. It's like, cool. That's a really nice, microtonal cluster, man. Yeah. But like, does it sound good? Like, do I want to listen to that?
Probably
the jury is out on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. He's definitely got his audience and his fan base. I wouldn't say that I'm in there, but yeah.
Yeah, dude. I was at NAMM last week.
Yeah, that is like ground zero for that.
Yeah.
Shit. I mean, I went once and it was.
God, I don't know if like it was cool and like
it's cool to go once.
Yeah.
But I think once is enough.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun playing a lot of things, but like, God, man, being there. And there's this funny thing that happened where like I was giving my homie who I was with, who makes like cool indie pop songs, but he's also like he went to I think he went to NYU for jazz school, and he's like an incredibly talented musician. But you know, his songwriting it kind of lives in like the indie pop type of world. But we were hanging out at NAMM, and I was giving him my Jib Collier take, and he told me this. But apparently this influencer guy walked by and like listened to us talk for a second and laughed and walked away. And my friend Tim was with, he was like, do you know who that was? And I was like, no. And I don't remember the guy's name, but apparently the guy's like famous online for shitting on Jacob Collier. So like he heard.
I don't know. I mean, I my YouTube algorithm isn't like the shit on Jacob Collier. So
mine is. I'm on the.
Man,
I
you really
Jacob
hate, bro. That's crazy.
Yeah, man. He's my one off. he bothers the shit out of me.
No, I mean NAMM, for as cool as it is in principle, that is everything that I hate about the music industry in one place.
Yeah, man.
Or like, I don't know. There's just like there's a feeling of despair there.
Yes.
I don't know. I went once and I don't need to go back like ever again.
Yeah, dude.
But yeah,
it's weird, man. I kept saying like this would be really cool if there was nobody here. Like,
oh yeah, for sure.
Because it literally is like Disneyland. Like it is.
Well, it's also across the street from
Disneyland.
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
But the amount of shit that's there is actually insane, bro. I spent like 15 minutes playing hand pans, which like I had never done before.
Yeah.
Like shit that like I thought was so cool, but then I would just like stumble into somebody talking about like an augmented fourth, and I'm just like,
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it was strange, bro.
I'm choosing peace this year, where I don't.
No, valid.
I've been like a hater for a long time. It feels good to at least try to not be.
There's not many things I'm a hater on, but I will to the day I die. This will be one of them. That culture is something that I will forever have like a huge disdain for.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I was curious to talk to you about like the difference in your process between your music and then the music that you make for a lot of films, and I was curious, kind of existing simultaneously in both of those worlds, how different those processes are. And I was also curious because obviously like your music, most of it like has some sort of vocals, but a lot of it doesn't. Especially, I mean, there's a lot of sections entirely void of vocals, and then a ton of sections where like you're singing on them, but your voice is so heavily like affected to where like it's kind of effectively like another layer in the mix, which I think is really cool. But it's interesting because I was curious how different those two processes are, making something that like I'm sure when you're scoring films like you're not really considering a vocal line very often versus, you know, in your own music where like you are thinking of vocal melodies and things like that. But do you approach those two things in a similar way process wise, or is it entirely different?
I wouldn't say it's like entirely different, but it's definitely different. I mean sometimes like for stuff that I've been writing for like films, I guess like melodies or motifs will kind of just kind of come to me in random moments, and you know, a lot of my Ableton sessions where I've been like writing for stuff like cues for films, even like there's like a muted like voice memo in there from like,
oh cool,
where I like I used my voice to like mimic it'd be really cool if like the piano did this or something. So I don't know. And I mean I've even like I've only worked on one like feature length film, this indie project for a friend, and there was even a couple of cues in there where I kind of used my voice as like an instrument. A little different obviously than like, because there's like lyrics and the stuff that I put out like as an artist. But I mean, yeah, obviously like with scoring to picture, like, you know, the saying is that like picture is king. You know, you kind of have to, it varies from director to director obviously. But because sometimes they'll say, well, you know, like I brought you in because I want you to put like your like take on this. which is obviously flattering to me, and I love working on projects like that. But also at the end of the day, like you kind of have to set aside your ego a little bit, I think, to what is going to serve the project best. And essentially you have a boss in that situation too. You know, it's got to be approved. So it is different for sure. I would imagine there's like an element of kind of like limitation breeding creativity there, because like I would imagine when you're scoring a film, like you kind of are effectively like trying to transmit the same stuff often that you'd be transmitting in a song for your artist project, but you're doing so like absolutely void of vocals a lot of the time, which is definitely, and lyrics, which is definitely like a important tool in terms of songwriting and storytelling. So it's almost like well, I guess I'll ask, like, is it ever kind of like you're trying to transmit the same emotions but in a way that's only sonic rather than lyrical or through melodies vocally?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. The good thing is a lot of scenes that I write music for have dialogue, which is kind of like the lyrics if you think about it. So it's like, what can I write that is like a good surrounding song? Yeah, you know, or just mood. But I don't know if I would say that, like, because when I started just making music, it was purely instrumental stuff. So I've always had like a very high, I've always put a very high, I've placed an emphasis on the mood and the instrumental and the sonics of things just as much as like, to the point to where if I were to remove the lyrics, it would still work really well. But obviously, like the lyrics, like it just adds a different flavor to it, but yeah.
It's a totally different kind of musicianship in an interesting way. Like, I find that really fascinating. Like, trying to transmit an emotion and just, like, taking away any kind of lyrics or any kind of singing in it. Like, it's so interesting, like, trying to transmit an idea just through sonics. And I think it's something that is a lot more... I don't know, like, buried's not the right word, but it's a lot more like it's less intuitive, I would imagine, to a lot of listeners, which is something that I admire so much for a lot of composers, and like your ability to like take a scene and then kind of like create the storyline in your head and like match that sonically. That's such an interesting skill to me. You were like, again, like I don't really know very much with that world at all. You kept saying cues. What is? I don't know what that means. What is that?
Yeah, that's just like a song.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I don't know, like the reason. I mean, I think you have like a cue point. Like this is when we want this music to come in.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I mean, that's all I've ever heard it referred to.
Yeah.
So,
is the process usually like a director comes to you and they explain what they want, or do they usually come to you and say they just like do the Gellerisms all over this? Or
I've had both. Like I said, it really just depends on the director, honestly. I don't know that I would prefer one to the other either. Sometimes it's kind of nice to have restrictions. I think part of the reason it's so hard for me to finish my own artist project sometimes is because I get lost in the sauce, And it's kind of nice to have limitations. And guidelines to follow.
Yeah, that makes sense, dude. I always like, I really think there's a lot of truth to the whole like limitation breeds creativity thing. I'm a drummer, and this was like one thing that I really realized, like when I was growing up playing, I never understood. I was like, why would somebody not want like a floor tom and 2 rack toms and 4 crash cymbals and like as many different elements to play with as they possibly could? And I always thought that way. And then I took off one of my rack toms and I was like, I'm thinking about the drum set in like an entirely different way now. It's just like it forces your brain to be equally as creative with like less elements, and sometimes that breeds an entirely different result.
Yeah, I mean, I would almost even argue it forces your brain to be more creative.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's why that's part of the reason I really like having like, you know, the modular, the Euro rack that I've built. If I could have it my way, I would love to have one of those giant walls with like so much more, but I can't afford that, at least not right now. So it's a relatively small system, but I think having, you know, for a while I didn't have like a lot of like patch cables. Like there was only so much I could do, and I think like some of the best, like some of the coolest sounds I think on the EP I've been working on honestly came from me just jamming on my Eurorack without having, you know, one hand kind of tied behind my back or something like that. So
damn, that's really cool.
Yeah.
When you say Eurorack, is that just like a combination of a bunch of like analog equipment and synths, pretty much, or like
it's that's modular synthesis. So it's like,
can you explain me the difference? I don't got synth brain.
Yeah. So like modular synthesis essentially just means like so obviously like in a synthesizer you've got, you know, your oscillators, you've got you know, a filter, you've got an amplifier, envelopes, maybe LFOs depending on it, which just like the various things that go into making an instrument, a synthesizer instrument. And I think, you know, I've at least deduced that modular kind of came from, you know, the meaning that you're essentially building your own synth from scratch. So like you can pick this kind of oscillator for, I want to use this, and I don't really care about, I don't need a you know, a second one, or I don't know, like you are essentially piece by piece, you know, it's modular, it can be changed around, pieces can be taken in and, you know, or, you know, switched out. And so yeah, I've, you know, Eurorack I think is just, you know, I'm sure there's other history behind the meaning, but that's a modular thing.
Interesting. Yeah. So it's just like different, like depending on how Eurorack is like created and like manipulated, it just is essentially manipulating the sounds that you're recording in different ways depending on like what you have within it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a million different ways you can use it. I mean, like McGee and Dijon, like they both run a lot of their like guitar or just a lot of their sounds through like their big Eurorack guys, because it can be a synthesizer, it can also be like an effects pedal. Like, there's just like so much you can do with it. That's part of the reason I mean, like a lot of people really love McGee's music, because it's just like, I don't know how he's able to like blend
it's insane
all that together, but in such a like cohesive way. But yeah, I mean, you know, it's really whatever you want it to be. Like that's you're building your own like dream instrument, I guess. Yeah, that's kind of how it was described to me, at least.
Damn, that's so interesting, bro. That's like a whole world, I would imagine. Like I would imagine like in the same way that there are like,
you want to talk about, you were talking about the NAMM community. Dude, the Eurorack like forums, bro, makes me want to shoot myself. Like, it's, I hope that doesn't get this like demonetized or anything. No, it's like
just gatekeeping, or just like
it's
like
that it's
music becomes math.
Weirdos like yeah, it's just like how can I respond to your question in a way that makes you feel inferior? And
that's just Reddit, bro.
But the thing is, like, it's like it is essentially a lot of it happens on Reddit, but also on like Modular Grid, which I love as a website. But you know, the forums are just I don't. It's a lot of I'm generalizing right now. I shouldn't do that, but I haven't had a lot of great experiences.
It's like engineers making music.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
No, like I'm serious. Like a lot of the people in that space, they are not full-time musicians. Like music is just like a hobby. Like modular synthesis is just like I just got home from my job as like you know, an accountant or something, and I'm gonna go, you know,
mess around with the modulars. Like, it's a hobby for a lot of people.
That's so interesting, dude.
Yeah.
The Reddit thing actually blows my mind sometimes, just how mean people are on that fucking website, bro.
Yeah, it's
I've asked
crazy.
like quite literally how you described it, like, how can I possibly degrade this person or make them feel bad? That's like, dude, I've asked like some of those simple questions ever on Reddit, like, where does this thing exist in the world? Or, like, does anybody know how I can get access to this or that or whatever? And people have responded like, well, did you look here? Like, are you blind? Like, just so mean, dude.
It's a lot of also like old head, like, creep dudes. Like, I'll find
OG incels.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it's a good way. Like, I'll find like there's some really talented female artists in like the modular space, and like you find their videos on YouTube. I can guarantee you, if you look in the comments, there's gonna be something kind of weird or creepy. Like, you know, but obviously that unfortunately happens in like a lot of spaces. I've just seen a lot of it happen in that niche, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I would imagine it's very online, which I think might have a lot to do with it.
It isn't, though, because like it's low-key a generational thing. Like, most of the people in that space, not most of them, at least most of the ones that I've seen. Again, I'm kind of generalizing, but it seems to be you know, there are obviously younger people, but you find a forum post from like 2008 or something, you know, and that poster is still active. I don't know. And, you know, there's people on YouTube who are probably over 50 who are in that space. I don't know. I took myself out of that rabbit hole a long time ago, so I'm uninformed, honestly. But,
you've got to, for mental health reasons.
Yeah, definitely.
When you're I mean, I guess elaborating on like the difference of process. When you're like making stuff for your artist project specifically, and like I said, like, it's cool because a lot of the times like there are sections that are entirely void of vocals, and then there's other songs, like full songs, that like your voice is heavily manipulated on to the point where it's almost like an instrument in the greater mix. Do you like? I would imagine a lot of the times the instrumentals come first for you. Tell me if that's not true. But
no, it is.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
Well, I mean, I've had like maybe one or two where they did. Yeah, I mean, it's true.
How do you know like when a song needs vocals and when it doesn't? Is that something you debate a lot? I know you said you tend to get lost in the sauce.
I do debate it a lot. I don't know. It's just kind of like it's less that, like, normally it's pretty easy for me to figure out, like, okay, I want to add vocals to this. Because a lot of times I'll write something with that intention. But I think it's more about, like, how I want to approach the vocal. Because, like, yeah, a lot of times I do use it as, like, I'm not, like, the most talented singer, and I'm not going to pretend to be. You know, I didn't start singing on songs until, you know, like a year or two ago. But, you know, like, there's certain tones that I know that I can hit pretty decently, and like, yeah, it's just like, okay, do I want this one to be more of like a vibe, or do I want this one to actually have some, like, you know, have like a place in the center of the mix or whatever. And, you know, like the project I've been finishing up, like there's some songs where it's instrumental, some where it's, you know, the vocal is like more of like that instrument kind of vibe thing, and then some where it's like more traditional, I guess. But yeah, I don't know, I definitely do a lot of like deliberating on like does it sound better in this key. Like something I really get lost in is I love using like the kind of Verispeed technique of like recording vocals, because I like when things sound, sometimes I like when they sound totally just like normal, like kind of pop vocal.
Yeah.
And then other times, like, I don't think a song calls for that, and I like when it's manipulated and sounds a little weird. So yeah,
it's kind of like a different approach to songwriting, because I think a lot of the times we're like, it's almost like the opposite of a singer-songwriter approach in a cool way, where it's like a singer-songwriter. I mean, it's literally like in the name, where it's like what they're doing first is kind of like trying to translate the story through words, and they're working backwards to find an instrumental that matches those words. Whereas like you're kind of thinking of the vocals like an effective part of the rest of the environment, where it's like you're kind of creating the feeling, creating the sonics, creating the environmental or the instrumental, I mean, and then figuring out like where the vocal sits in that greater picture.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and a lot of times I'm like, dang, like sometimes I wish I had more of that like singer-songwriter like approach, whereas I'm sure there are singer-songwriters out there who probably wish they had more of the approach of like you know, I think everybody wishes that they had something that they don't, you know. But I wouldn't say that like you know, they're different, but they're also, it's you know, kind of the same.
Yeah. I think there's some people who like, I mean, you brought up McGee, who's like, I think a really good example of somebody who like lyrically does things that are so interesting and like is really telling amazing stories lyrically, but then the instrumentals are so like out there, and like you know, everybody talked about his guitar tone, but even past that, just like the way he plays his guitar and like the way he manipulates his voice and his voice in general. Like, have you seen him live?
A couple of times,
like the way he's especially in the new project, the way that he sings on the project and the way that it adds to the greater picture is so insane.
I love the guitar tone, and I know that's like the thing that everyone's been trying to like reverse engineer. I guess it's not really a secret anymore, but like the drums are the more impressive thing to me.
Dude.
Like, and the engineering is just like fucking insane.
On his latest tour, the live drum setup was so cool.
When I saw him last, like the first sound was like, there's this one modular drum machine. I guess it's not modular. It's a weird thing. It's called the Pulsar 23, one of the best like pieces of equipment out right now, and he uses that on a lot of his stuff. And I was just like having like a total like nerd freak out moment, because like the first sound of his set was just like this really feedback heavy like distorted drum loop.
Did you see him on this last tour?
I didn't see him at the Palladium. I saw him at the Fonda.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, so it was a couple months before that.
Where did we see Mario? Palladium. Yeah, we saw the Palladium.
I didn't go to that one. Yeah. But I think the set list was probably a little different. But yeah, no, I think he's incredible.
That was the second time I'd seen him. We also saw him. He did I think for that tour, the Forum tour, or the Fonda tour rather. I think it was for that tour. He did like a warm up show, like at the Moroccan Lounge, where
Dude,
like he posted.
So and it like, I know exactly what you're talking about. I wasn't there. My friends were stuck outside basically, but
Mario was the first person in line. Number one.
I wish I was there. I think I was out of town for something. I don't remember what it was, but I would have killed to be there. I mean, it looked insane.
They played like almost in pitch black, and they had these like
red
headlamps.
No, I've seen the
on.
videos. It's incredible. Like,
so cool, man.
Made me mad I didn't think about that idea at first. Like, that's so sick.
Sick, dude. Dude, he's just pushing creativity, and like, God, that guy. I don't know how his brain works, man. When I saw him live at the Palladium too, he did this thing where it was almost like funny. It was like he did it a couple times between like a couple different songs. He would just like he would hit like a pad on his drum pad, and it would just play an eagle sound, like going like
I mean, he kind of does that like vocally too.
Yeah,
where he'll just like do the shout. Yeah. Or like the just on the guitar.
It's almost like an ad lib.
Yeah.
It's like McGee's version of an ad lib. Did you like kind of existing in those two worlds simultaneously, the composition world and also the artist project world? I was curious which one came first. Did they come simultaneously, or did you fall into an artist project as a means of composition, or did you kind of like pursue them at the same time? And like, that, do you think, did that give you more room to be creative and experiment because you were doing those two things at the same time, or was it ever daunting to exist in those worlds at the same time?
I mean, I definitely started the artist project first. I mean, I've been making music under Geller since I was like 15, and I was putting stuff out on like SoundCloud or whatever. But like I've told a lot of people, I wouldn't really consider like last year, 2024, I kind of really consider like the first like true year of my project, because like I think I had really kind of come into my sound and figured it out, and then I put out like my debut EP. But like I would say that like throughout the process of me like discovering my artist sound, through those years, that came first, but I would say that like the method of songwriting, or like I guess like soundscape sculpting or whatever you want to call it, was kind of always influenced by like I've, you know, always been really interested in like film soundtracks, and known that like I want to do that also. And that even goes back to, you know, when I first started making beats, and they were terrible, like really bad. Yeah, so I would say the artist project came first, but like I would say that the two kind of exist in the same space of thinking for sure, which is why I don't find it daunting to do both at the same time. I mean, and it's been done. I mean, another guy I really look up to is like One Tricks Point Never. You know, and Trent Reznor is somebody, Johnny Greenwood, you know. There are also, you know, a ton of other like up and coming smaller names who are doing the same thing. So it's definitely like it can be done without it feeling like they're two different like separated things.
I would imagine it's also like a nice release from the more like traditional side of the music industry. Because like whereas, is it not? It's probably just like
they both have their own things.
It's probably just like a different form of the same machine in a lot of ways. Or no?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I haven't really had like enough experience to really say that yet. But you know, you kind of run into, more or less the same problems in both, but slightly different, I guess.
Yeah. It's cool too, because I always think about like there's some cool examples of this. There's damn, his name escaped me. Mario, what was the guy that you just interviewed with Booyah? I don't know, his name escaped me. Yeah, like Signcrush Motorist. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. But like I was thinking about this the other day. I was like, that guy has so many damn projects that like
that's incredible.
He probably anything that he makes, like he can find some way for it to fit into one of those aliases. That's like a really, really interesting idea to me. I would imagine like it's probably there is a tad of bit of it. I would assume that like is easier in the sense that like you have ideas that like if they don't fit the Geller project, maybe they'll fit a movie.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I would say like, you know, there is like on my Spotify page there is like there are like some more like ambient songs. I guess like if you kind of look back on like the date on those, it's kind of most of them are before I put out like that EP last year. And it's not that I'm trending away from, you know, just like doing those. I always kind of felt like those were just like kind of placeholder things just to kind of like introduce people to like the types of sounds that I like to make. But like, yeah, I mean, like I can always, you know, make some sort of like ambient bed of sounds for a film and it's going to work fine. Without the like, oh well, this is like an ambient, you know, like oh, this doesn't really fit in this which like is kind of a stupid way of thinking anyway. But like you know, I mean, definitely true about like it is like a nice. I can kind of like exercise different muscles, I guess. You know?
And they all kind of have a different place to be housed, which is really sick.
Yeah.
And I mean, especially when like I'm not sure like if the next project's like this. I'm sure it is, but like Couch Fever specifically, the last project, it's so like it's such a world, and I think that's what's so cool about the live EP video to me is that like it really feels like the physical manifestation of that world, all the environmental stuff going on, and like you painting in it is so cool. That's such a cool shot.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. But just like even the colors, like down to the colors of it, it really feels like a world. And that way, I would bet that like having to create music for other people's worlds and other people's films and other people's visuals, I would imagine that reverse engineers to help you kind of have the inspiration to make your own worlds.
Definitely, 100%. Yeah, it's kind of like acting almost in a sense, where it's like, you know, I'm acting my part in this film too, just as the actors are. But yeah, I mean, it definitely has. It has, like, I've take every project I work on, whether it's a good or bad experience, I always try to take something from it. You know, like a puzzle, you know, you're adding it to the bigger picture. And yeah, I would definitely say, like, for sure, I definitely place a really, like, there's large importance to me in world building, for sure.
Yeah.
And sometimes I wish I could do a little faster. But yeah, I mean, that is something that I definitely take as an influence from, like, my love for, like, film and like soundtracks for film too.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It does take a very long time, man, to like build out and flesh
especially
out.
when you're, like, you know, still kind of on a DIY level to some extent. So, you know, yeah.
It's almost like with every new project, like an artist has to almost like rewrite kind of like almost like a little novel. Like they have to kind of like establish the bounds of his music
cool
exists
to, like,
within.
not do that though.
Yeah.
Once, you know.
I think social media makes it way more important to do that, unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, sometimes I wonder, it's like, you know, sometimes I'm like, oh, maybe, like, if I didn't, you know, place such a emphasis on, like, what I'm, you know, showing, and I kind of just didn't overthink it, I wonder if it would be less stressful, but I also don't know if that's true. And, you know, who cares? Like, you know, if it's if it's what's true to me, then, you know, that's what I got to ride with. So
yeah, that's beautiful, bro. I think that there's a lot of truth in that. It's just feeling it out, and whatever feels the most like you is really where you should go. I feel like most times. Geller, thanks for doing this, man.
This is really fun. Yeah,
this felt like a really good conversation. I appreciate it, bro.
Yeah.
Last thing I wanted to ask you, if you had like one kind of overarching message that you hope people got from your music, like one thing that you hope that people would, you know, one big takeaway that you hope you could impart on people who listen, what do you think that would be?
Well, I'm just like, you know, be yourself, I guess. You know, I think it's cool when, you know, to be a little different and to, like, lean into that. You know, I certainly try to do that with my project. You know, and I think that that's kind of a message that you can apply in a lot of different areas of life. So, yeah.
Hell yeah, bro.
Yeah.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.
This is really fun.
Yeah.
I really love your music, and I love your
Appreciate
mindset and everything, and I'm excited to see what you do next.
Setup you guys got going on here.
Thanks,
too,
bro.
So,
I appreciate it, man. Yeah, appreciate it. Tell them you have an EP coming out within this year. You have
next couple of months, we'll be rolling out the like the first single pretty soon. Yeah. And
then where can they follow you and stream and everything?
Geller Music on all platforms, and just because somebody took Geller, I wanted that. And then Geller on Spotify. Yeah.
Hell yeah. Thank you, brother. Appreciate you, man.
Yeah.
Thanks, bro. Music matters.